Hello, everyone. It's November 10th, 2022, and this is the weekly developer meeting for Backdrop CMS. We get together every week to talk about priorities in development for Backdrop. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm the project lead for Backdrop, calling in from Oakland, California. We'll do a round robin here of everyone in the room to kind of get introduced. We'll start off with Robert, and then we'll go to Tim.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California.
Thanks, Robert. Tim, and then Luke.
Hi, my name is Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim in Deerwood, Minnesota. And that's it.
Thanks, Tim. I can see you looking out the window to see if there's any animal updates, but none today. Luke, and then Jen.
I'm Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager in San Ramon, California. I go by Cell Ear in places where one uses handles, and I'm currently interested in marketing and migration issues.
Great, thanks, Luke. Jen, and then Andy. If you have audio today, we'll go to you.
Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California.
Andy, if you're available.
Andy Shillingford, joining from Cayman Islands, Stockholm on the internet.
Awesome, thanks, Andy. And then finally, Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That is it for the introductions. Jen, we have one new module to announce this week, I believe.
Yes, we have just one. It is the UberCart addresses module.
Okay, excellent. All right. For discussion topics this week, we're a little bit light on topics. There weren't any suggestions made in the forum post this week. And also querying people before the meeting didn't really have urgent topics to discuss from those present either. One thing I'd like us to revisit is the update on PHPCS, the GitHub action that we have that checks our code syntax every time a pull request is filed. There's an issue 5848 that is going over kind of some of the unexpected side effects of having the code syntax checks run on every pull request. The state of that is that the action sometimes can incorrectly flag non-modified lines in the same file as needing syntax changes when those lines weren't changed at all. It only happens within the same files that were modified, so it's fairly minimal, and it only happens on lines that were last touched by the same author as the author of the pull request. So it's a very funny, narrow little window, but one that happens with some frequency nonetheless, because we have a small group of committers or contributors that make changes pretty frequently, and so it's most likely to affect, the bug folders and herbdools and indigo zellas out there that are modifying a lot of the same core files repeatedly. And the good news is that kind of the takeaway we had last week was that syntax errors don't necessarily need to block the merging of pull requests, and contributors don't need to make those changes. They can if they want, that are being recommended, and core committers can merge things even if the PHPCS checks are failing. However, the direction that I wanted us to take was to fix the action itself so that it doesn't have this problem. And I just pinged the maintainer in our issue queue saying maybe we could work with the author of the action, and he immediately popped into our issue queue and said, here's the line number for where that problem is, which he pointed at. I don't think he read through our entire issue. He pointed at a line number that does have an effect, but not the one that actually matters for us. But still, he has enthusiasm there for apparently fixing the problem. So I take that as a really encouraging sign. that I think that we can get this problem fixed in the action itself. And if it was fixed there, then we would no longer have this problem and need to work around it. So the action itself is written in TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript. So it's not an area that I think that we have a lot of experience in. But at the same time, it's also not very difficult to hack the way through it. The action itself is really more a bunch of git commands that TypeScript executes, it seems like. So I think knowing the right git commands is really the kicker here, not necessarily being familiar with TypeScript. So that's issue 5848. Kind of the standing approach to that is let's try to fix the action. Let's see. I had something else that came up, but I'm struggling to remember what it was. Does anyone have any more topics now that the meeting is going that they'd like to bring up to discuss? Okay. Well, just generally speaking, the thing that I see immediately happening in the next week or two is the release of Backdrop 123.1. It's been almost 2 months since the release of Backdrop 123, and we haven't had a bug fix release yet. So we're accumulating a number of issues that need to be incorporated. There's 6 open RTBC issues, and there's 17 merged issues already in the 123.1 milestone. So there's a good number of things that are ready to go and get out there. So I'm hoping as soon as we can get through the current list of RTBC issues, clear out the things that obviously should be included in the next release, and then we'll get that 123.1 out there into the wild. That's all. That's all I have. I guess we can do other status updates. 124. Talk about that a little bit. 124 will be coming out January 15th of next year. And we only have 3 open issues right now that are slated for that, that are still in progress. We've got issue 5820, which is an expansion of Vue's capabilities to list modules and themes and layouts, and to pull out things from the .info file, or sorry, the info column, which ultimately comes to the .info file, and display that information in views. That issue 5820 has a pull request that needs review. It's already been looked at by a couple of contributors, and looks like there's no real holdups there. Really simple one from John Romine is issue 5553. Just make it so that the database log message length is configurable. That one needs work, but is an overall pretty simple pull request. And then we have adding alt and title fields to the image entity file type. That issue 4007 has a really excellent set of acceptance criteria that Yorkshire put in there last week. And so this looks like right now our next step on this is actually validating all of these acceptance criteria and making sure that it's all accurate, and then it can be picked up for development. Those are the only 3 issues that we've got for 124 that are currently in flight. Obviously, lots of potential to include other functionality. These are the only things that are slotted in 124 currently because they're the only issues that have advocates. Tim, I saw you unmuted. Is there anything you'd like to say?
It's just going to emphasize that part, that to get something on that list, you just need to advocate for it. So if anybody wants to advocate for any issues. We don't, I mean, that issue that Martin is advocating for seems to be like the big one. We don't have any, I'm thinking from a marketing perspective. Like what's the promotable issue, a new feature of the next release? And it's
it's a little light.
Little light, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also the issue that has been merged already, and that's the rebuilding of the search index can be done immediately now instead of on cron jobs, which admittedly is not a very strong marketing thing, although I absolutely love that because that's been one of my pet peeves since the beginning of Drupal. Just turning on search module and it just doesn't search anything always just drove me nuts. And now
Was that a really low issue number in our queue? I feel like we ran into that immediately where we're like, this has always bothered us in Drupal. We must fix this problem. Do you remember? Was it like 246 or something?
Hang on, let me look.
It might not be. I was just getting excited.
No, it's not. It's 4182.
Okay.
Opened in 2019. So actually not that old of an issue at all.
So we had, like, I think in one of the really early versions of Backdrop, Greg and I went through and completely redid that form because it used to lie to people. Like the button said rebuild search index, which it did not do, which it does do after this change.
Yes,
but then we changed it. So we're like, let's say what it actually is. And then as we were in there, Greg's like, this whole page needs a whole bunch of work. So I thought it might have been a follow-up issue there from that.
Yeah. I'm curious, yeah, looking just for fun, looking through our oldest issues, which I've never done before. Maybe, there's a lot of things in here that probably need to go. Because the oldest issues, there were all of these things that we thought that we might do at the time that were more like drastic changes, and they're not really in line with our philosophy now. Like, in 2013, we hadn't even hammered out our philosophy in its entirety yet. Although some of them, actually hilariously, the oldest issue ever that's still open is remove taxonomy term reference field. May actually come back into play.
We might have a duplicate. We might have a duplicate issue for that.
Yeah, might be fun to start using this one again just because it's so freaking ancient.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, now that we have entity reference in core.
Issue number 51.
Issue number 51. Yeah, it looks like yeah, so we might not even have the Gregory updated this summer. There's issue 5633 that is separate term reference from taxonomy module. But that's only separating it, not removing it.
We did that one though, didn't we?
No, it's still in progress.
Okay.
Herb will file the pull request. It's marked needs work. Gregory actually did find issue number 51 and linked them up.
Of
course he did.
Let me ask a question that other people might be running into that's related to this, which is, so I was building something and I'm building up a sort of a demo site, and I wanted to import taxonomy terms. And I decided, instead of using the term reference field, to use the entity reference field because it's now in core. And I thought that's the right thing to do. And I did open up a forum post on this, so some of you have seen already. Anyways, then I wanted to import the data with feeds, and I don't think that I'm not able to get multiple fields, terms into one field using feeds if I use the taxonomy or if I use the entity reference, where I can if I use the term reference field. Is that, well, one, am I just wrong? Does anybody know that that's possible? And two, like, would that be a bug? Is there, does anybody know if there's an issue open for that? Is that a feeds problem or is it a core problem?
I know
Um,
that Feeds supports importing multiple values on various different types. I don't know if that type is supported. I know that term reference fields with multiple values work a little different than entity reference fields with multiple values. So yeah, I don't know exactly where the problem is, but
Yeah, I think there might be some special processing there to like process the lists of like a comma. You enter it as like a comma separated list in the tagging, and then it just creates dynamically all of those entities. So I think what we need to do is have some way for an entity to specify it has special processing when it's being referenced, and that way the reference fields can handle that properly.
yeah, there's a
So-
lot of very specific behavior for term reference that doesn't exist yet in entity reference that needs to be reproduced. And we know that's incomplete. So I would say it might be smarter to use term references until you know you have all of the features you need in entity reference. And then there's probably a way to do a migration from term reference to entity reference at that point.
Okay,
Yep.
Well, that's good
I'd
advice.
agree with
It-
that.
okay.
It would be cool if we could make that so you could like easily take the taxonomy terms, like automatically create new terms feature and tack that onto other custom entities
Yeah,
so that we can reuse the stuff for other modules.
I think
Yep.
there's a Drupal 7 contrib project that does that. I've seen that before.
Okay, and I think the other part of the question for this meeting would be, does anybody know, or is this too hard to tell if this is a core issue, or is this a feeds issue? Does feeds need to adapt to entity reference, or does entity reference and core need to make changes for feeds? Is that not possible to answer?
I don't know. I guess it's probably a
This
feeds
might-
issue that you have
might
to add
be-
a bunch of extra support for feeds right now. But there could also be changes necessary to core that would make that support not necessary. So it might be both.
Yeah, it's probably a both issue.
Would you, like, if I wanted to open an issue and I don't know the answer to that question, where's the right place to start the issue? And do I start in feeds until we decide otherwise, or do I start in core until?
I think if you want Indigo Zealot's help, you should start in core because she will jump on it immediately.
I would say you probably should be in feeds module though. I mean, if that's
Yeah.
that's what you're using and that's where the problem is. That's
Yeah, and I think the maintainers of feeds, it might be one of them, will probably be able to look into exactly what the problem is. And if it is a core issue, we could say it's a core issue. We've opened a core issue, or you can open a core issue for something. But at least you'll get more specific information.
Okay. I am, by the way, looking up who the maintainers are so I
Bother us.
can, so that I
I
can,
think it might be Herb
that sounds right.
or me or Larry.
both.
There's like a combination of, yeah.
Maintainer. Oh, Andy's here. Andy's listed. As
Oh, even better.
Andy and Herb are listed as the maintainers. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. That was me. If I'm going to do one more quick question. Last week I brought up this whole in the usability meeting, the issue of default config or default styles, because I wanted to one of the things I want to do is be able to create. I was interested in the ability to create a style with that formatted text as 2 columns. Again, I'm trying to find a way to do this in a site without having to write custom code. So I could obviously do this in my theme if I just wanted to do that. But I found that doing it as a style doesn't work so good, because when I apply the style, it applies that to each line. Like if I have a list of 10 items and I apply a style to those 10 items, it applies that style individually to each item. And I don't know how to get around that. And this I don't know if this is appropriate for this meeting. It's may or may not be kind of a core issue. It's more how to use a core feature. Like I want to apply a style to a block. And I guess I'm also asking it here because I don't know if there's another way to do this without writing custom CSS to create columns. We don't have a CSS plugin or a CK editor plugin for that, which I think would be another solution, right? There might be a CK editor plugin that would do that.
Yeah, the thing you're talking about in particular, this is within CK editor.
Yeah,
want to
it's in the body field.
some
Like for a
columns.
text editor to just be able to put a list. If I've got a list of 50 items that are very short, in the body field, I don't want, one long. I'd love to be able to make that 2 or 3 columns. And I've run into this situation a number of times. Again, I could solve this with a class and some custom CSS.
Mhm.
But I'm just trying to figure out if there's an easier way for like a site editor to do that. And I'm not hearing one. So, and I don't know.
CK Editor 5 with a custom web component.
Well, with adding a custom class is probably the right way to go, I would think. Like, in your so CK editor, in your CK editor style sheet, your theme has the ability to specify a CK editor style sheet in its .info file. You can add a bit of CSS in your CK editor style sheet provided by your theme that adds a particular class. Say it's called columns or something like that. And then when you configure the styles dropdown, enable the styles dropdown in the editor configuration through the UI, and then in the text area for the list of elements that can be affected, add in, either probably like div.columns and then give it the name columns. And that makes it so that when you have a div, you can then apply the columns class to it. If you're only dealing with one list, you could make that be ul.columns and make it so that, say, this only applies to unordered lists. And then there's a CSS property simply called columns that does a pretty amazing job of taking a list and breaking it into multiple columns.
Right, that's what I wanted to create, basically to use that CSS and create a predefined style that an editor could apply. But I think you might have given me a solution to this. The problem I was having is that it would apply to each individual item, but it wasn't applying the CSS to the whole list, unless I put custom classes in there, which I was trying to avoid. I mean, directly to hand code the custom classes.
Yeah, the benefit of doing it as a style, if you say ul.columns, you specify the tag name, that makes it so that the style for columns only appears when you're selecting the UL itself, so the overall list, and not the individual LI items.
Okay.
So that way you can target the particular HTML element that you want to receive the class by saying, which particular element is gonna, what the tag name is in the styles list.
Thank you. If I get that to work, I'll write that up somewhere for other people.
Yeah, here, I'll show you also just share screen. So here's we had a site that had this like chunk of related information down at the bottom. And we use CSS columns to split this up and have the browser do it automatically for us. So if we go down to like 2 columns or 1 column, so 1 column is what it would normally do. This is what it would look like normally.
Right.
But just say 2 columns, the browser automatically separates those into columns as it sees fit. And then 3 columns, 4 columns won't do anything because we don't have that many items in here. But yeah, pretty cool that just.
And that's on the div tag.
Yeah, this is on the wrapping div in this case, because these are 4 different unordered lists, each with a heading. But if you had 1 unordered list and you wanted to separate just that 1 unordered list, then it could do that too.
Okay.
Is this a new layout tool, like a new display type in CSS?
Yeah, columns is reasonably new as far
Okay.
as I understand, but I don't think it's really recommended for layout, like overall page layout. I don't think you'd want to use it because it doesn't have the level of granular control that you really need. You're leaving a lot to the browser saying, split this up as you see fit. There are some,
It's like if you have a bunch of things in a box and you just want to split it out for readability.
Mhm. Yeah, but
Which-
there's some things like there's this CSS attribute called break inside, and you can say avoid. I think like if I turn this off, for example, then you end up with this sort of thing where, you know, it's breaking where it wants to, and so you end up with here we go. Like if I get rid of this too, so there you go. This is what it would actually do is split it evenly, right? Split this all the content across 3 columns evenly without regards to which elements need to be stuck together. So then this break inside a void is necessary to keep elements together that should go together. But even then, like that avoid rule is only like a recommendation and not necessarily something that the browser will follow.
Okay.
Yeah. But fun. CSS, always getting better. Okay, let's see. One more thing that I thought of, I saw that Robert, you jumped in already on the fixing of the packager on backdropcms.org. That when we publish new projects, sometimes nodes are double created or the package isn't created correctly because we get hit by multiple webhooks from GitHub saying the release has been generated and it causes race conditions. There's a pull request for that at issue 948 under backdropcms.org. And Robert volunteered to deploy that sometime in the next couple of days, which is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay. Nothing else? We can call it a meeting. A little bit of a quiet one today. That's fine. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you out there for